Hey everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson. We're at about episode 25 or 26 of the Crit House. We started about 6 months ago. And when we started, we had this idea that we would show discussions about either a project or a body of work. And it's all with this idea that there are a lot of photographers out there who, number one, don't realize how important it is to show your work and to get feedback on that work and the projects that you're working on. And we just thought it would be a good idea to sort of have those conversations, and hopefully, in the process, maybe improve the work of some photographers and improve some projects. The episode today is going to be a little bit of a culmination of that. Early on, I think it was episode 4, we had a woman on, Carrie Usmar, who had submitted an application to participate in the Crit House through our website. And she had a project that she was working on, and she was looking for help with it. We brought her on. We had a couple of esteemed reviewers on, Derek Fossbender and Phil Penman, the renowned and world famous Phil Penman, an amazing photographer, both of them. And we talked about her project and her body of work. And since then, Carrie has taken that work, and it has been shown. After there have been some changes made, some of them we discussed on the Crit House, and she has been in shows in Rhode Island, at the Rhode Island Photographic Museum, as well as on the Curated Fridge. And then recently, over the summer, she was made a finalist for Critical Mass, or one of the 200 finalists for Critical Mass, which is it's a renowned event. And we thought that it might be a good idea to have a conversation with Carrie to talk about where she was, the conversation we had on the Crit House, and the changes she made because of the discussions, and maybe compare the two. So not only did we have the conversation about the work, but what became of the work, and perhaps what will become of the work in the next step. Here's that conversation with Carrie Usmar. So thanks for coming on again. I'm so happy to see the success of this project that we talked about last spring, I guess it was. But so just real quickly for people watching. So you have, since we run the program, you have been a part of the Julia Margaret Cameron Award, the Curated Fridge, the Pollax Award. You've been in a show at the Rhode Island Center of Photographic Art and the Newport Art Museum, and then you were a finalist for Critical Mass as well. I mean, that is in a few months since we talked, and since we sort of looked at your project. That's a lot of acclaim. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to be here. It has been a lot of work, good work, I'm passionate about the project. And being on the Crit House really helped me and changed me, and it changed the trajectory of my project in a really good way. I took a lot of advice from the reviewers, and basically kind of narrowed down the images and came to my top 10, and have been sort of, for a while, I've been submitting different images to these awards, because it's what I'm feeling at the time.
Yeah.
But I do have like a top 5 that I always usually send. And one of the helpful things that they said was about this pull between the commercial and the documentary. And I decided to go towards the documentary
Well, so
aspect.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before we get like too deep into like the specific changes you made, so I have up on the screen the previous the version of the project, and maybe tell us a little bit about what the project is again, because not everybody will have seen it. So this
Oh,
is
yeah.
the initial version, and then this is um, these are the 10 images that ended up in what is, I think, the final, and I'm sure it changes a little bit depending on what you're submitting to, but these are those 10 images. Um,
Yeah.
so tell us about the project real quickly, and then let's talk about what you heard from us, and what changes you made in the imagery going forward. Would that be, can you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the project is called Resume of a Stay-at-Home Mom, and it came about in I was going to apply for a grant, and I needed a resume, and I didn't have anything to put down except being a stay-at-home mom for the last 10 years. And I started to do research on stay-at-home mothers and if you're supposed to put that on your resume or not. And the research says not to put that on your resume, to come up to put what you volunteer and different other things that you do. And I thought how awful that is, because this is a 24-hour job, 7 days a week. It doesn't end, and it's hard. And you go through so much and you grow so much. And I just felt like I need to do something about this. I need to create something. So I decided to take pictures of my family, candid pictures, usually have the camera on a tripod and just see what happens. And then I paired the images with a skill that someone would be looking for, an employer would be looking for on a resume. So you're seeing these are the older images, but also the titles are important that you're seeing because they do go with the images. And they would be on a resume. They would be things someone would look for on a resume. So I think I shared about 20 images with Derek and
Phil, Derek Fossbender and
Phil.
Phil Penman. Yeah. The
Yes.
greats. Yeah.
Yes. And so when I submitted the project to the Crit House, I felt like it was done. And it's amazing to realize how much further it could go just from that time. And I received a lot of feedback from them in the show and decided to change some of the images and also take some new pictures.
Yeah, so
And
there are if I was looking through it, there are like only four, is it four images from the original grouping to the new grouping that stayed? Is that, I think that's the number I counted,
yeah,
right? Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's a substantial change. So
yeah.
like what was the um first of all, I mean I'm always thankful for photographers coming on the Crit House and being as courageous as you were to show your work, and to have it out there in front of the world to be able to see. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming on again and sort of having this sort of follow-up conversation. Um, but I mean that's you received some pretty hard not criticism, but I mean some hard things to hear. What was it that was most salient for you when we had that conversation, when you walked away? What was the takeaway that you feel like was the most important piece that we discussed?
So I'm going to be honest and say the right after the show, I felt like my baby, my work was like not great, like it just was, my bubble was burst, but I needed that. And once you realize that, you say to yourself, well, actually, this is a good thing. There's so much more I could do, and work on with the project and you know, it was, it was good to hear that. Um, the I'm sorry, could you remind me what the
Well,
question was?
so let's follow up on that, because that's a really good point. It's hard to receive feedback on something that you've put so much care and love and so much of your heart into it. And then, I mean, I think that we all thought that this is a really interesting project. but it needed maybe some tweaks. And
It's
sometimes when you're on the receiving end, those tweaks get blown up into like, oh, they hated it. Um, you know,
and I missed all the good stuff that they said, which they said some really great points about the project. The idea, the concept is awesome. And, they said a lot of great things that I sort of forgot about in the first week since the recording. And once I watched it, once you shared it on YouTube, I was like, wow, like this is super helpful that I have a copy of this. um, but also like, they said a lot of really great things about the project. And then they also said what could be worked on. And this is going to be really helpful for me.
right.
This is going to help like the vision of the project move on and move forward. So,
Well, and so one of the things that was discussed, and I don't remember who brought it up, whether it was Phil or myself or Derek, was that some of the images, and we're looking at the original images on screen right now. Some of the images have sort of a feeling of being stock photography, which I can only imagine was for you hearing that would go, oh, like kind of a punch in the gut.
So I think you kind of need to choose a direction, whether you want it to look very stylized or you want it to look very natural. Like there's a few images here, I think number 4, where it kind of looks that's, very natural kind of reportage kind of work. And then maybe the one below number 5 looks very kind of almost commercial stock. I personally, I prefer like the more candid looking.
So what did you do with that? What did you do with that input?
so they both said, you all kind of said you could go either way. And my gut feeling was to go the documentary way, because I really like the images that have come out from letting go of some of my visions. Like, so some pictures are really planned and then other ones are more natural. And so the planned ones never went to as planned and were kind of frustrating to work on. And so it just almost seemed easier for me to just set a camera up and live life and see what comes out of it. So it's been kind of a relief. I do still have ideas that I want to get through, but images that I have in my mind, but the kids don't always cooperate. So
Children
so this has
will be
been,
that way.
it was really great though for somebody to see that and tell me that, because I didn't see it. And it made the images, the project really come together as a whole.
Yeah, and you can see, so we're looking at the images from the new project, and you can immediately see that it shifts from that sort of stock kind of, these are much more, they have life to them in a way that that first set didn't have as strongly. I mean, even just like this image, you can kind of feel, this isn't like one of those overwhelmingly emotional images, but you can, as a parent, I can feel where you are at this, trying to talk or explain, and there's the mess that's around. And, it sort of hits you at your home, and this, all of these are kind of that same way. And this, this image now suddenly, you're trying to do something, and there's all this stuff that's going on around you. So it's just there's a wholly different feel to it, and I think it's really enjoyable for me to see. Now, this is one of the original ones, if I remember right. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which had that definitely has that emotional element as well. Light's lovely in this one.
Yeah.
So
I think,
so you went from sort of into sort of a documentary approach to it, and did you stay with the same resume storyline? Because the
yeah,
pictures you sent this time don't have the titling with them, but it sounds like
yeah,
you stuck with it.
I've stuck with that. It's still very passionate about that. I think the titles take away from the images when showing them. And, a lot of people, yeah, I mean, Derek said it in the very beginning that he's focused less on the pictures and more on the titles and the whole concept, which is great. But I also really want the pictures to be the main part, you know, I
Right.
mean, a big part of it, and not be too distracted. So
So
yeah, took those out. I mean, but every image is still titled, and somebody reviewing the work would see the title.
right. So there's another more sort of specific recommendation for, and you referenced it before about setting it up on a tripod and letting it go of how you shoot this. What was the difference? What was the recommendation, and then what did you do differently in the newer images?
So before, I was using a remote, and you can see in the picture of me with my daughter on the ground, I have a remote in my pocket. There's several of them. I have a remote in my pocket or in my hand. I'm hiding my hand. And Derek, I think it was Derek, said use an interval timer.
So I think something that might help it is shooting and setting your camera up for interval timer, where it's going to, okay, every 5 seconds, it's going to take an image. And then just acting or not acting, just letting life play out. And this way you're capturing that moment where you might have images that aren't technically perfect, but they don't give off any hint of being staged, where it's 100% completely candid. Because once you set an interval timer and you say you set it to go off and take a picture every 3 seconds for a minute or 2 minutes, you eventually mother is going to kick in, and you're going to forget the camera's there.
And I actually had one, and I totally forgot about that. I had it, and it was like a game changer, because really the camera can just sit and go every 10 seconds, and then I'll have a ton of images to look through, but I ended up finding these gems, you know? And so it's opened up a whole new world for me, and not having that remote in my hand and dealing with that is also, it just felt like it was stressful, and trying to capture the moment and then, you know, messing around. I still do some of that stuff, but I felt free not to have the remote in my hand, for sure.
Well, I mean, you still have to focus on the frame. You still have to focus on the positioning and sort of where everybody is within the frame. So, I mean, it's not like you're completely disconnected to the fact that you have a camera that's there.
Right.
How did that change? How did that change just the process of you working with your kids when you're doing things? I mean, I assume it freed it up a little bit.
Yeah, it did. Now I sort of, I will set the camera up and put on the interval timer, and then I'll start it, and we'll be like today. I actually took some pictures today of our lunchtime. And so I set the camera up and set it on the interval timer. And, you know, I was making lunch, and then I went back to check it to make sure to see what it actually looked like, and realized, oh, there's a big green water bottle that's like neon in front of the kid's head or whatever. So, you know, I do have to go back and look and make sure I want the composition how I want it. But, you know, the kids didn't realize what I was doing. They were just eating their lunch, which was the best part.
Yeah.
They're not looking or distracted by the camera or making funny faces. And that, I think, was one of the issues before, was that they'd know when I took the picture, and they might look or make a face. And so then I'm like, oh, it's not as candid as I want it. So,
Right.
you know, that it really helped the process so much.
So there was one other area of discussion that I thought was fruitful in terms of what you would want to do, and I think that was in regard to like marketing and how you get it out there. And Phil Penman, who's just this renowned street photographer, had a lot of thoughts about that.
Marketing. That's what it comes down to. I think you have like an idea for a hell of a campaign, like Instagram. I presume you have your own Instagram page or LinkedIn or TikTok. you're gonna need to create a whole new page for this. Okay, so start working on getting that page together. At the same time, you need the most important thing, and I say this over and over again, your mailing list. Okay, it's the most important thing you have as a photographer is emails. So when you do have your exhibition, you can put out your email. You know, with social media, you're very we're reliant on the algorithm letting other people know. With your email list, you know that they get it and they can choose to ignore it or not, but at least you know they got it.
That
So
what was your takeaway from that part of the conversation?
He had a lot of great advice. Well, one thing he said, like, so as I said earlier, that I felt like the project was finished, and he said, you need a lot more images. And that was kind of like a heartbreak to me. But then I was like, oh my gosh, why is it a heartbreak? Like, I live life, this is fun, you know, like this doesn't have to be over. So anyway, and he also talked about marketing, like you're saying, and putting the work out on Instagram, creating my own profile for the project. So I think I have done that. It's resume of a stay-at-home mom. And I've added pictures there, but I also am super busy. I'm still a stay-at-home mom. I have a couple hours a week to work on different things. So as much as I love to do more marketing, it's not top of my list, but
we
the
do have
plan is
lives to
still
lead.
there, and it's baby steps, you know. I'm not
Well,
going anywhere. Neither is the work. So,
well, I mean, just, you know, sitting back and looking at the difference between the new project and where you started, and, you know, looking at the specific images there, you've done a fantastic job of kind of taking that next step to the next level. And it's really, for me, it's stunning to see how a discussion that we have here can help. And I know that there were probably things in that conversation where you said, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, were there things that you said, I don't agree with that, or I'm not going to be able to do that now? I mean, because that's one of the things about critique, right? I mean, people will tell you, hey, you try this, and sometimes as the creative, as the artist, you just have to say, no, that's not for me. That doesn't resonate for me, because I mean, we've seen this on the Crit House innumerable times. We have two reviewers come on to talk about the work, and one person will say this and the other person will say the opposite, and they both can't be true. So it comes down to you as the artist to make a decision. So I mean, were there some of those things that were discussed where you're like, that's not the direction I'm going to go?
yeah, there was giving the kid the camera. I think Phil mentioned about giving the kids the camera and sort of making it more collaborative, which it's a great idea. I'm just a little afraid for my camera. But
they are very
actually
expensive.
but today my oldest was like, can I take the picture? And so I think that could be in the future. I just at the time was like, I don't know if I could do that.
Well, you could also get a little point and shoot, a cheaper camera that has not bad optics, and see what they come up with.
I know these days the cell phones are like amazing too, you know.
They
So
are. It's true. Yeah. I do a lot of cell
it's
phone
kind of
work.
crazy.
Absolutely the case.
Yeah.
Well, that's all really interesting stuff. And I like I say, it's always an honor for me that people like you come on and show your work. And I can't tell you how tickled I am when I see a post that you put on Instagram or wherever I happen to see it with another show or success. And when that critical mass email came out, because I had registered for critical mass, I don't think I wasn't even sure if you knew it or not, but I saw your name on the list of all of the photographers who were accepted, and I was like, oh, that is the most exciting thing I had seen in a long time. I was overjoyed to see that.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I'm super grateful, honestly. Like I for a long time didn't show my work, you know, and kept it to myself and was scared to do that. And but realized the value in critique and feedback, and how much it helps the project change and become clearer. And so I was open to it.
Well, and I'm glad you were. And you know, it kudos to you for being to listening and accepting those things that you thought were the right thing to move forward. Because I mean, I can't imagine a better example of how this process can improve a project. I mean, your success since we talked, and I'm trying really hard to not take credit because
No.
it's you, because you're the artist and you're the one who made the decisions. But
Yeah.
I sort of have this, I have it's like a pride thing about the work that you've done, that that we in the Crit House were at least involved in your path and your mission and your moving forward. So it's really an honor to see it, and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So to everybody else who's out there watching, if you are interested in participating in the Crit House, as Carrie has done so successfully, you can register to contact us and apply for participation at thecrithouse.com. And we want to thank you, Carrie, for joining us. And I want to thank Phil Penman and Derek Fassbender as well, who are the two people who had given you that feedback as well. They were great, and great folks to be able to do that. So thank you so much for watching the Crit House.